During the black and white era Pokemon cards, we were introduced to EX Pokemon. These were powerful 2-prize basic Pokemon with high amounts of HP. And today we're looking over some of the best of these kinds of cards. And starting us off at number 10, we have Mew-EX from Dragon's Exalted. This Psychic-type Pokemon has 120 HP, which was lower than most of the EX Pokemon, but had a very unique ability to make up for it. Its ability, Versatile, allowed you to copy any attack from any Pokemon in play, as long as you had the necessary energy to use the attack. It also had the attack Replace, which allowed you to move all the energy on your board around as you'd like. This could be useful to spread your energy out, but it wasn't the key focus of the card. Since Versatile allowed Mew-EX to copy any attack from any Pokemon as long as it had the necessary energy, this led to Mew being a very splashatile and versatile card that can be put into basically anything. Two of the notable cards Mew-EX was paired with were Exalted from Dark Explorers expansion and Zoroark-GX from Shining Legends expansion. Exalted is a stage 1 with 90 HP and the attack Deck and Cover for 2 colorless energy. It does 50 damage and paralyzes and poisons your opponent's active Pokemon while shuffling itself back into the deck. Paralyze is a condition where Pokemon can't attack or retreat for 1 turn, and Poison is a condition where Pokemon take 10 damage after every turn. Pairing this with Gothitelle from Emerging Powers and Dusknoir from Boundaries Crossed allowed you to have a near perfect lock on your opponent, as long as they did not play 2 copies of Keldeo-EX from Boundaries Crossed. Gothitelle has the Magic Room ability, which prevents your opponent from playing any item cards from their hand while it's active. Dusknoir allowed you to move around any damage counters on your opponent's board as often as you like during your turn. Using Mew, you were able to more consistently use Deck and Cover to continually paralyze and poison your opponent's active Pokemon and shuffle itself back into your deck, allowing you to promote Gothitelle to prevent them from playing any item cards. Once it was your turn again, you were able to use Dusknoir's Sinister Hand to move all the damage counters off their active Pokemon to any other bench Pokemon and retreat into a Mew-EX to copy Exalted again to continue the lock. Mew was also commonly paired with Zoroark-GX as a way to counter Buzzwole-GX. This card was especially good against Zoroark-GX as it was a fighting type and would hit for its weakness. Since Mew is able to copy attacks, you were able to use it to copy Zoroark-GX's Riotous Beating attack, which did 20 damage times the number of Pokemon you had in play. With 5 Pokemon in play, you would do 100 damage since Buzzwole-GX's weakness is Psychic-type Pokemon, and you were able to knock it out. And at number 9, we have Landorus-EX from Boundaries Crossed. This card is a fighting-type Pokemon with 108 HP and 2 great attacks. The first is the Hammerhead for 1 fighting energy. This attack does 30 damage to the active Pokemon and 30 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. This was a very strong attack as it allowed you to weaken up multiple Pokemon for only 1 energy. It also has the attack Land's Judgment for 2 fighting energy and a colorless, which does 80 damage plus 70 more damage if you discard all fighting energies attached to Landorus-EX. This attack was nice as a way to take potentially big knockouts or as a way to get some extra value out of your Landorus-EX before it got knocked out. Landorus was paired with Mewtwo-EX during this time, as Mewtwo-EX was an overall strong attacker that could be paired with almost anything. Furthermore, cards such as Hypnotoxic Laser and Verbank City Gym were able to help Landorus-EX apply more pressure. Hypnotoxic Laser was an item card that came out in the Plasma Storm expansion. The card poisoned your opponent's active Pokemon and let you flip a coin. If the flip was heads, your opponent's active Pokemon was now also asleep. And sleep is a condition where a Pokemon can't attack or retreat and can wake up if it flips a heads at the end of a turn. This card was a strong way to add extra damage onto a board and as a way to potentially force your opponent to find a card with a switching effect to remove the sleep status condition. Verbank City Gym is a stadium card that also came out in the Plasma Storm and made it so poison would do 30 damage between rounds instead of only 10. This card in combination with Hypnotoxic Laser allowed you to do an extra 30 damage between turns and to continue to weaken your opponent's Pokemon. And at number 8, we have Jirachi-EX from the Plasma Blast expansion. This card had an extremely low 90 HP and was Metal type. This Pokemon's ability, Stellar Guidance, allows you to search your deck for a supporter when you play it down on the bench. It also has the attack Hypno Strike, which costs 1 metal energy and 2 colorless that does 60 damage and puts both active Pokemon to sleep. This attack isn't anything special, but its ability allows for added consistency. Since Jirachi has 90 HP, you were able to switch out with a card Level Ball. This is an item card which allows you to search your deck for a Pokemon with 90 HP or less. This was extremely useful in decks that play low HP Pokemon, as it added a way to search supporters with Level Ball if you weren't using it to search for the other Pokemon that had under 90 HP. Even in decks without Level Ball, including Jirachi-EX is beneficial as it helped you find a supporter if you didn't have one, or it can help you find a specific one that you needed. Overall, this card was a useful card that could be splashed into many decks to help improve consistency. And at number 7, we have Hoopa-EX from Ancient Origins. This 170 HP Psychic-type Pokemon has a powerful ability that was viable in many decks upon its release. Its ability, Scoundrel Ring, allows you to search for up to 3 Pokemon EX when you play it down on the bench. For 3 Psychic Energy, you also have the attack Hyperspace Fury, which does 100 damage to 2 of your opponent's Pokemon at the cost of discarding 2 energy cards from Hoopa-EX. The ability was very useful in decks that focus on using mini EX Pokemon during a game. Like decks that featured Mega Rayquaza-EX, for example, benefited from a Hoopa. The main goal of those decks was to get 8 Pokemon in play thanks to the Stadium Skyfield, which increased both players' bench size to 8 instead of 5. Mega Rayquaza-EX has the attack Emerald Break, which for 3 colorless energy does 30 damage times the number of bench Pokemon you have. Hoopa allowed you to search for 3 additional EX Pokemon that could all be benched and increase the damage you can do with Mega Rayquaza. Hoopa was also useful in combination with Mega Gardevoir-EX, which had the attack Despair Ray, which costs 1 fair energy and 1 colorless, and does 110 damage plus an additional 10 for each bench Pokemon you choose to discard. You were able to discard useful support Pokemon off your bench such as Hoopa or Shaymin-EX to increase the damage you were doing. This also cleared your bench of anything that might be an easy knockout for your opponent. Both of these cards were really able to use Hoopa-EX to its max potential. And at number 6, we have Seismitoad-EX from Furious Fist expansion. It has the attack Quaking Punch, which costs 2 colorless energy and does 30 damage. It also prevents your opponent from playing item cards during their turn. It also has the attack Grenade Hammer, which for 2 water energy and a colorless does 130 damage and 30 damage to 2 of your opponent's bench Pokemon. Quaking Punch was the main attack you would use with Seismitoad-EX, but in some scenarios you would also use Grenade Hammer. Seismitoad was often paired with cards that disrupt your opponent and force him to either pass or use all of their resources trying to attack Seismitoad. Most of the time it was paired with cards like Crushing Hammer or Enhance Hammer to get rid of your opponent's energy. It was also paired with Lysandra's Trump card before the card got banned. Lysandra's Trump card is a supporter card that made both players shuffle their discard piles back into their deck. Its effect excluded other copies of itself, but did not stop you from shuffling back in copies of Versus Seeker. This item card allowed you to pick a supporter from a discard pile and add it to your hand. This ended up being problematic and led to the card's eventual ban. Years after this card was released, it found its way into Zoroark GX decks in the expanded format. By using Zoroark to draw cards, you were able to find cards such as Acerola thanks to the ability Trade, which lets you draw 2 cards at the cost of discarding 1 from your hand. Acerola was very useful with Seismitoad, as it allowed you to pick up damaged Seismitoads and put them back into your hand and keep the energy card. And at number 5, we have Keldeo-EX from Boundaries Cross. This is a 170 HP Water-type Pokemon that has the ability Rush In, which allows it to move from the bench to your active spot once during your turn. It also has the attack Secret Sword for 3 colorless energy and does 50 damage plus 20 more damage for each water energy attached to itself. Its ability combined with the tool card Floatstone, which removed the retreat cost of the Pokemon it was attached to, made it so Keldeo-EX was the perfect pivot to allow you to always be able to switch into whatever Pokemon you wanted in the active. Not only did this card see a massive amount of success as a great pivot in a lot of decks, but it also was played in its own deck. The deck had Keldeo-EX as the main attacker and was paired with Blastoise also from the Boundaries Cross expansion. This Blastoise had the ability Deluge, which allowed you to attach 1 water energy from your hand to any of your Pokemon as often as you like during your turn. This bypasses the 1 energy per turn limit that players normally have and allows you to attach multiple water energies to Keldeo-EX to allow it to do even more damage. To get the Blastoise in play, we would have to evolve it from Squirtle using the card Rare Candy, which allows you to evolve it directly into a Stage 2. Later on down the line in the Primal Clash expansion, we got the card Archie's Ace in the Hole. This card can only be played if it was the last card in your hand, and if it was, you could pick up any water Pokemon in your discard pile and put it onto your bench, and then draw 5 cards. Using this card, you were able to get Blastoise out without having to play Squirtle or Rare Candy, and instead could just build around using Archie's Ace in the Hole to get Blastoise onto the board. This combination of cards led to this deck winning the World Championships in 2015. And at number 4, we have Yveltal-EX from the XY base set. This card is a 170 HP Dark-type Pokemon that has 2 powerful attacks. Its first attack for 1 Dark Energy and 1 colorless is Evil Ball. The attack does 20 damage and 20 more damage for each energy attached to both active Pokemon. This attack is useful for opposing Yveltal-EXs, and if they have too many energies attached, they can get knocked out by an opposing Yveltal. Its second attack, Y-Cyclone, costs 1 Dark Energy and 2 colorless and does 90 damage. It also requires you to move 1 energy from Yveltal-EX to a bench Pokemon. This attack is incredibly useful for being able to apply pressure onto your opponent's active, while also moving energy into the bench so that all of your energy can't be taken off the board. This card was played with a plethora of different cards, but the 2 most popular were Maxie's Hidden Ball Trick and Garbodor. The version with Maxie's Hidden Ball Trick focused on using it to pull a fighting type out of its discard. The main targets for it were Gallade and Archeops. Gallade is a stage 2 fighting type with 150 HP and has the ability Premonition, which allows you to look at the top 5 cards of your deck and rearrange them in any order you like. It also has the attack Sensitive Blade for 2 colorless energy and does 60 damage plus 70 more if you played a supporter during your turn. This card had a very versatile ability and also served as a counter to any lightning type Pokemon that could hit Yveltal for weakness. Archeops is another fighting type Pokemon that can be put into play with Maxie's Hidden Ball Trick. It has the ability Ancient Power, which prevents both players from evolving any of their Pokemon from their hand. This means that if you use Maxie's Hidden Ball Trick on their first turn of the game, your opponent will have no chance to evolve any of their Pokemon if they play any evolutions. Garbodor was also a very strong partner for Yveltal because of its Garbotoxin ability. This ability states that if Garbodor has a tool attached to it, all other Pokemon in play don't have abilities. This was strong with Yveltal-EX because it doesn't rely on abilities, and Garbodor can shut off your opponent's ability. Yveltal-EX saw a well-deserved success all throughout the XY era. And at number 3, we have Mewtwo-EX from Next Destinies. This card was one of the first EX Pokemon to come out when they came out in Next Destinies. This card has 2 attacks, the first being X-Ball for 2 colorless energy and does 20 damage times the number of energies attached to both active Pokemon. Upon release, this card was insane as it was a 170 HP Psychic-type basic that had a very strong attack during that era. Mewtwo-EX ended up becoming the focus of the best deck at the time. These decks would play multiple copies of Mewtwo, Tornadus, and Celebi Prime. This card had the ability Force Breath, which allowed you to attach a grass energy from your hand to one of your Pokemon once per turn if Celebi was in the active spot. This allowed you to accelerate energy into Mewtwo and Tornadus, which was an alternate attacker that wasn't weak to Psychic. Tornadus-EX has 2 attacks, the first being Blow Through for 2 colorless energy, which is 30 damage plus 30 more if there's a Stadium card in play. Its second attack, Power Blast for 3 colorless energy, does 100 damage. You also have to flip a coin, and if it's tails, you must discard an energy from Tornadus-EX. As mentioned before, Mewtwo has weakness to Psychic-type Pokemon, which means that it hits itself for weakness. This is the reason why people would play Tornadus-EX as an alternate attacker. As new sets came out, Mewtwo-EX found itself with new partners such as Darkrai-EX from Dark Explorers. And at number 2, we have Darkrai-EX from Dark Explorers. This card has a crazy ability and a solid attack, along with a lot of support that revolves around Dark-type Pokemon. Its ability Dark Cloak gives any Pokemon with any Dark energy attached to them a free retreat cost. This is very strong as you no longer have to worry about running switch cards and allows you to have more space for other cards in your deck. It also has the attack Night Spear, which costs 2 dark energy and 1 colorless and does 90 damage to your opponent's active Pokemon and 30 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. This was a great attack that allowed Darkrai-EX to 2-hit KO most other EX Pokemons in the format, and also set up bench Pokemon for knockouts with the 30 damage. Other cards like Dark Patch and Dark Claw both help Darkrai-EX. Dark Patch allowed you to attach a dark energy from your discard to one of your bench Dark-type Pokemon. This was useful to power up Darkrai-EX on the bench. Dark Claw is a tool card that increased the damage of Dark-type Pokemon it was attached to by 20. This made it so Darkrai-EX was doing 110 damage to defending Pokemon, which was useful for getting over thresholds to better 2-shot Pokemon. Darkrai-EX was often paired with Mewtwo-EX as a secondary attacker. This is because Mewtwo was a generally good attacker and was able to attack with dark energies. This card continued to see success in the modern day in any expanded dark deck. And at number 1, we have Shaymin-EX from Roaring Skies. This card is a colorless 110 HP basic. It has an insane ability that completely changed the game when it came out. Its ability setup allows you to draw cards until you have 6 cards in hand when you put it down into your bench. This ability drastically sped up the pace of the game and allowed decks to become a lot more consistent. The card saw play in almost every deck for the entirety of its legality because of how much consistency it added to a deck that played it. Being searchable with cards such as Ultra Ball, which requires you to discard 2 cards from your hand to search a deck for a Pokemon and put it into your hand. You can then search out Shaymin-EX, and since you discard 2 cards with Ultra Ball, you can now use it to draw until you have 6 cards in hand. It also has the attack Sky Return for 2 colorless energy that does 30 damage and shuffles itself back into the deck. This can be nice to shuffle Shaymin back into the deck so it doesn't become an easy target later on in the game. Ever since the card was released, it has been good, and eventually the card Scoop Up Net came out. This card allows you to pick up any non-V or GX Pokemon. This means you can use it to pick up EX Pokemon such as Shaymin-EX to reuse the ability, which actually resulted in Shaymin-EX getting banned from the expanded format, as being able to reuse the same Shaymin-EX multiple times a turn led to some decks being able to win on the first turn of the game before your opponent was able to play a single card. Alright, and that's the list. If you know of any other Pokemon EX we may have missed or have any ideas for future videos similar to this one, please let us know down in the comments below.